You know, I'm a pretty big fan of the Drunken Peasants podcast and of Stephen King. So naturally, I was really psyched when their Patreon content last month was a review of the Drunken Peasants watching Stephen King's It, the made-for-TV movie. Oh, I was excited. It was great. Some of the best content they've come up with yet. But of course, there's always a weak link. There's always an onion in the ointment. And in this case, the onion was named Scotty. And during the review, Scotty kept asking the dumbest questions I've ever heard.
Oh, why doesn't Pennywise just kill them all? Why doesn't Pennywise just kill them all as soon as they come into town?
Oh my god. And I could see TJ, beautiful TJ, I could see him rolling his eyes in consternation, as if he could barely contain himself at Scotty's idiocy. Now, don't get me wrong. If you've never seen It before, and if you've never read the book, then you'd be forgiven for thinking that Pennywise was some sort of omnipotent, omnipresent, supernatural ghost of a thing that could just do whatever he wanted at all times, just an all-powerful demon. However, if you've actually seen the whole movie, then by the end of the movie, you have enough information to know the truth. But of course, the truth just sort of glided by Scotty, as so often it does, and he remained gleefully ignorant. It was unbelievable. So, for the sake of Scotty, and anyone else who's as stupid as Scotty, I just want to explain one simple thing about It and Pennywise the Clown. As even the most casual fan of Stephen King knows, Pennywise is not a supernatural, all-powerful deity. No, Pennywise is a being from another dimension. He hails from the Todash darkness outside the Macroverse, and he came to our world, to Derry, Maine, because of the thinning of the walls of reality that occurs in the Dark Tower saga. Duh! As such, Pennywise is a life form with specific properties, with discrete abilities, and in fact, he's not as powerful as you'd think he is. 99% of the time, when Pennywise appears as a clown or some other frightening thing, that is merely an illusion. He is just projecting himself into the minds of his victims. He does this by way of his deadlights. His deadlights are an organ of magnificent complexity. They emit some sort of neurochemical stream or wavelength that can expand only to the radius of Derry and can implant false visions, auditory hallucinations in the minds of his victims. So when Richie is coming into town or hanging out at the library and seeing balloons of blood, Richie is actually safe. Pennywise cannot touch him. Pennywise is only in his mind. This should be obvious to everyone. Pennywise does not kill them at the drop of a hat because he cannot. I mean, look at Pennywise's first big kill, at the beginning of the movie when he lures Georgie into the sewer grate. Now, an imbecile like Scotty would assume,
Hey, why doesn't Pennywise just burst out of the sewer and go rampaging down the street killing all the kids he wants? Why doesn't he do that?
no, look at how Pennywise operates. He stays in the shadows. He's trapped down there. He has to lure Georgie in, and he has to beg the child to come closer, closer, closer. Come on, Georgie. And then finally, when Georgie gets close enough, rah! Pennywise snatches him, but he only gets an arm. He just succeeds in tearing Georgie's arm off. Now, why is this? Because, as we've all seen at the end of the movie, Pennywise's actual physical form, the physical body that he has to use to, physically grab people, is a big old fat, slow, clumsy spider. I mean, picture this. In order just to get Georgie, Pennywise had to slowly trundle through the sewers, down beneath the streets. He had to wedge his giant fat spider ass into a sewer that could accommodate his bulk, and then he could just barely lift up one of his stupid gay fucking spider arms through the grate and just, kind of barely snatch at Georgie. This is not the act of an omnipotent spirit. It's the act of a big, fat, slow, stupid spider. And, as TJ and anyone else with a brain could surmise, whenever Pennywise actually physically kills someone, he usually comes from under a bridge or from a sewer or a drain. He's like a big trapdoor spider who just kind of mucks around the underneath of Derry, picking off a few victims here and there. And I know what you're thinking. If Scotty were here, he would say,
Well, what about when he turned into the Doberman Pinscher and, killed the guard to release Henry Bowers? What about that, huh?
In that case, I believe that Pennywise killed that guard by frightening him to death. Yes, that is something Pennywise can do. If he frightens you enough, you'll have a heart attack or a seizure and probably die. Duh. And as for the scene where Butterball Ben is being menaced by the spinach skeleton coming up out of the pond, I don't know. That one could go either way. Either Pennywise is actually there in his physical form, or it's just an illusion. Who can say? But I'm glad you brought up the Henry Bowers scene, Scotty, because what Pennywise says there to Henry Bowers reveals the true limitations of his power and the true nature of his being, in fact. He states, quite plainly, that he can only hurt people who half believe. If someone doesn't believe, or fully believes, then Pennywise is helpless against them. Now what does this mean? This actually reveals the depths of Stephen King's genius and his knowledge of Far Eastern mysticism. Let me explain. Stephen King is clearly very familiar with the transcendental philosophies of the Pongla masters of northern Nepal, as am I. Their ancient teachings were the basis of Taoism and Buddhism and several other later Eastern creeds. But the important thing is this. The masters of Pongla taught that all suffering comes from the state of uncertainty between two pure states. All human souls begin in the state of Nan-ku, which is the cloud of unknowing. It is the barely conscious state enjoyed by, infants, young children, animals, those who are asleep or inebriated. It is the state where one does not have enough consciousness to truly suffer. On the other end of the spectrum is the perfected state of Larigna, which is the state of all-knowing, of being completely conscious, completely accepting of all the harshness of reality. To be in the state of Larigna is to be the swordsman who accepts every cut on the battlefield while still acting with perfect clarity and focus. But in between these elemental states of Nan-ku and Larigna lies the in-between state of Rodaldo. This is the state that most humans find themselves in at most times, the state of uncertainty, the state of lukewarm, wishy-washy, either-or, uncertainty, fear, terror, not knowing what to do, not being unconscious or perfectly conscious. Rodaldo. Go look it up. Naturally, the goal of every soul's journey is to travel from Nan-ku through Rodaldo to the perfected state of Larigna, and this is what the Lucky Seven do in Stephen King's It. They begin as innocent children, they encounter fear and terror in the form of Pennywise, and they end up in a state of Larigna, where their strong belief in one another and their total accepting of the horror of Pennywise allows them to defeat him. Pennywise, naturally, would like to keep the seven kids in the state of Rodaldo, the state of being uncertain and confused, imbecilic, unknowing, like Scotty, but they are drawn together by the benevolent forces in King's universe. The god of the macroverse, the turtle, whatever you want to call him. Pennywise would prefer that they remain separate, but they come together, their friendship and belief strengthens one another, they reach the state of Larigna, and they defeat him. And this is what you must do, Scotty. You must get yourself some fucking knowledge and learn what the hell you're talking about before you destroy another Drunken Peasants bonus content. I recommend, of course, beginning with reading It, as well as The Stand, Insomnia, The Dark Tower Saga, which now consists of 8 books. You should probably throw in The Talisman and Black House, just to be safe. After that, go and study the teachings of the Ascended Masters of Pongla. Their teachings are condensed in a book called The Dalinitian Scrolls, which is available at most booksellers. Learn it, Scotty. I beg you. If you study hard, then one day you can reach the same level of mental excellence as Chi-J. Oh, beautiful Chi-J. Oh, and if you're wondering...
Yes, I have been fucking with you this whole time. Scotty is the greatest drunken peasant. Scotty is the greatest. He shall destroy all other peasants who oppose him. This cannot be questioned. Bow down before the reign of Scotty!